So, yeah, she hadn't seen it in quite a while, so.
Totally under wraps and then like, he was a doctor, so he didn't make it. He should have.
When,
I'm also-
yes.
What is your name?
She would be. So, yeah, was. Same class, so she was, yeah, so she tried to show us. So she managed to, so she had score 81 and the rest of the series. She was.
Oh, I have no idea.
It's
So was this the other class?
Yeah.
Groves with a capital W.
But anyway, yeah, that's how.
I'll find for you. soon.
She's on a little flag right outside the door. He was pretty sure.
Yeah, there you go. Webster Groves with a capital
He
W.
was just, he just got the Webster. Notes in the morning.
Yeah, that's what she did.
Yes.
That's what she did. Okay.
Over.
2 minutes on lunch.
Yeah.
The list of
It's already started meetings.
Oh,
They look at
right.
it seriously, and these people are.
Chris, my wife's saying. Yeah. I lied.
Sure.
Because some of the people are incredible.
Yeah, yeah, but still.
Yeah.
That's inspiring to some people.
Nice to see you.
How are you?
That's right.
Yes,
Yes,
we tried to trick or treat Clark at your house and you were not there.
I was there. We were there.
Well, this is.
Maybe I think their own house is your house. Yeah, this was at like midnight, because Francis stayed up really late.
We were screaming. No, we were there, and we had about 20.
Oh, okay. We talked to the guy across from you, he had a fire
Alright.
pit, and he was really nice and I missed you.
I would like to call this meeting to order. We have, come on in,
Advisor?
yeah,
The Episcopal Church stole
Um,
them.
I'm sorry, the seats around the walls are for the folks that want to have something to say,
Okay,
okay?
I'm the alternate member.
Oh,
Actually.
See, I apologize.
There's no way for you to. Actually, Greg Perks. We're going to be a full-time member because Bob is going to step down as a full-time member.
Oh, is that right?
How's he doing?
Congratulations.
That's why he's.
Thank you. That's
Welcome.
welcome.
So I think.
Hey.
The alternate member,
Rob.
Rob Wagner.
From Bob to Rob.
Yeah. Amazing.
At MAWAG.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, and Rob, Katie Nakazuno, the clerk, should be sending out some information on that, because it has to get approved by the council and then Bob will step out and he'll step in, so.
Okay.
But in the meantime, you can sit there.
Yes.
Where drug test and.
Okay.
Right.
I need to do a quick roll call. I have Ann,
Yes.
Clark, Steve, Susan, and Ron.
And Carrie raised her hand. Oh, is she on? Here we got. And Bob Fox is making it. Franklin. Go.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm calling in tonight. I'm
Hello.
under the weather.
Hello.
Okay, so we have a quorum. I would like to now review the minutes. Do we have minutes?
I sent those out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Friday.
Yeah, Friday, I think.
And do we have any input? I have not looked at them yet.
Did we accept them?
Second,
I second.
thank you. All in favor of
Hi.
aye, okay, that passed. I will quickly read the Traffic Advisory Commission goals. We put those as part of our agenda. The first item, use safety as our guiding principle and propose recommendations that are unbiased, transparent, and administratively fair. B, develop complete streets policies specific to Webster Groves and present them to the city council for approval. The third is develop a written plan for the Traffic Advisory Commission's process for evaluating citizen requests. And finally, prepare a document of uniform criteria for parking restrictions. Now, this is our opportunity to hear from our local citizens. You each have 3 minutes. You make a statement that, and basically we kind of sit quietly and hear what you have to say. Okay, so if we're gonna have blank faces, don't be surprised. You were here first. Can I?
Okay, my name is Sheila Noonan. I live at 801 Colebrook, which is about halfway down from Glendale, right behind the swimming pool. And I've lived there since 1992, so a long time. Traffic on our street in the morning has, I'm guessing, tripled since I've lived there, since the kids have come over from Steger. And this does not count the disruption of the Moss Field and the traffic going through the normal route. They're dumping into Colebrook and you can't move. They're flying down the street. So I did write to the traffic officer who's in charge of traffic. And I know they put up a speed sign for a while and then it went away. I watched cars in the morning. As soon as they spotted it at the intersection of Carmel, they would hit their brakes. So I'm not sure how you pick up actual speed if they're slowing before they get to that sign. Anyway, I just wanted to mention to you that it is becoming dangerous. The cars are not traveling at 25 miles an hour. It feels more like 40 to 50 miles an hour. And after they drop the kids off, they go even faster on the way back because they're going to work. So anyway, it's a major issue. You can't walk your dog until 9 o'clock because there's too much traffic. And they're weaving in and out of what cars might be parked on the street. It's getting really dangerous. We don't have sidewalks.
Okay,
So
all right, thank you.
Thank you for considering any help you can give.
All right,
My name is Ashley Mans. I live near her on Colebrook. Been here since I so we do appreciate the trailer, the traffic study and the information. Very interested in like looking into that to see what was gotten off of the trailer. But I have done a little bit of research and apparently the city has approved a commercial size exit, which is 34 feet in nature, but our area and Moss Field is designated as residential. And so they've approved an exit onto our residential street from residential zone, but it widens the intersection by 10 feet. And the school district has said it so they can get the cars out of the parking lot faster, but they're funneling them directly onto a residential street, not onto Elm, not onto Glendale, was just designated as an accumulator. And neither one of those intersections is as large as what they have in the plans that have been approved by the city. And I haven't been able to get a response. I haven't been able to get, I'm not gonna everybody really have a card in everybody's office. Seriously, so. I'm here, I'm not hiding. It's a good day.
okay.
And,
Thank you.
And as Chris said, we don't usually interact, but I just feel compelled to say that, and when you're finished, you guys don't have to stay for our whole meeting. But we are they will be recorded. When we get to our complete street sort of update, you might be interested in hearing just sort of the work that we're trying to do to move that forward.
Absolutely, I appreciate the work
yeah.
you guys are
So
doing.
keep the comments coming.
Okay, thank you.
Peg Peterson. I am another Colebrook resident. I have only lived there for 8 years, but in the time that I lived there, I've seen the traffic. I mean, the first thing I wanted to do, I moved over from Tuxedo Park. So then I have always lived in Webster and there's always been sidewalks. And the first thing I wanted to do when I moved in there was to get a sidewalk. Because there's so much traffic on the street and there's so many kids and there's so many school people and church people and parking and that, it's just a very kind of dangerous place. And I was walking my dog, I would always be afraid that I was gonna get hit by a car or the dog would get hit by a car. There are many elderly people that live on that street now that are downsizing and moving in or have lived there forever and still live there. So it really is a very big safety concern for not only the three of us, but many other people that live not only on Colebrook, but in that whole neighborhood, because the cars, you know, run down Innisfail, they run down Carmel, they run, you know, it's very, very disturbing and very dangerous. It's a health issue. So I would like to know what you said that you were putting together these plans or suggestions. You're going to take them to where? What's the process?
Why don't you, if you're interested, why don't you please stay with us here afterward and you'll hear the whole story, okay?
Can I ask-
One more thing, I just wanted to offer, if any of you would like to come over for coffee some morning at 7:30 and watch this process, you're more than welcome to sit in my living room.
Yeah, I was there to watch it. So my only clarifying question would be, so there's a short segment of sidewalk on Colebrook at the exit of
There is
school.
no-
There is no
Or where the students cross when they come
They
out of
have to
school.
cross Colebrook.
Right, so there's a sidewalk over there. And do you know the history of that piece of sidewalk?
crosses the creek.
It doesn't matter. It's there. It's concrete. It'll be there for 50 more
Well-
years. I really don't care about the I honestly don't, because the problem is that the intersection that's being widened, there's no crosswalk across.
Well, I don't think I understand the purpose of my question. I mean,
I
just
wanna hear.
understanding how that relatively new looking sidewalk got there. If anybody knows, could help as we look at it.
Oh,
I talked to the mayor. It has an argument with Public Works as to whether.
So nobody knows anything about how
No,
that sidewalk.
as to whether or
Okay.
not there
That's
is
all.
even sidewalk policy.
Okay.
Like the mayor doesn't know, Public Works doesn't know,
Well,
I feel a bit gaslighted by the whole political process here in Webster Grove, frankly.
I've been walking the streets of Webster Groves with my dog since 1992, and that
Yeah.
sidewalk has always been there.
It's been there a long time. Okay.
Always, in the 32 years.
Yeah, it stops. I know it stops the problem. That's
Yeah,
why I was.
there is sidewalk everywhere in Webster Groves, except for in this particular
Yeah.
development that was built by the Castles, I understand, and they just didn't put them in 1940.
Okay.
I'll jump in here too. I also live in South Webster and there's not sidewalks everywhere. They're missing in a lot of South Webster. I would say most of South Webster. And one of my questions was gonna be if anybody knows with the sidewalk, how you go about requesting a sidewalk. I know they put one in, I live on Central, which is across from Southwest Park, and they put one in on our street. It's probably been about 5 years now, and it was 7 to 9 years in the making. And I don't know how the formula or the process came about, but I know one person on our street was really interested in that sidewalk and approached City Hall and ended up needing to get signatures of 30 to 50%, most of the street. And then from there, the city Public Works worked with that, I guess, request and came up with plans and finally went after grants. This is why it took 7 to 9 years, but it did eventually get in. I know that they got grant money for it. And we do have a sidewalk. So I don't know.
When
Yeah, I
the
know.
intersection is 34 feet wide and then we can get a sidewalk and then put a crosswalk across it, I'll stop
Well,
coming.
and I was going to say that includes a pet actuated crosswalk at the end of our street, which to the park, which would be a perfect similar opportunity to put one to get in and out of the school. Not that this would solve all the problems, but
Well, may
maybe
I add though, that it's not even designated as a school area, there's not a sign at Colebrook that there's nothing, it's just, hi,
Okay.
you're on a residential street and there's a giant commercial entrance, so that's what they're.
Well, this is a couple different requests. Then we can find out how to make is how do you request school signage and how do you go through a process to request a sidewalk. So those are a couple things that I know, I think our group can probably investigate and see what we can do about, we need some clear, I guess what I'm trying to find is clear action items for us, to kind of start helping. So,
And anything would help. So I met with TrailNet and I met with Todd from Public Works last Thursday. So they're both open and willing to discuss a traffic circle at Innisfail and Colbrook to try and slow things down. However, I don't know. I don't know. You know, I'm
If you would,
sorry.
so let us look into it, okay? And then we'll decide what our next steps are, but thank you for bringing this to us.
Appreciate it.
Sir, may I?
Yes. Hi, my name is Doug Stanley. I live on Mason Avenue. And I am here to use my 3 minutes to ask some questions that I realize that you may answer later in your meeting. I'm also a volunteer on a commission. Yes, sir.
Where is Mason Avenue?
Mason Avenue is next across from Holy Redeemer. Behind our house is 4 houses down. It's behind the library. We can see the high school from our house.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're very close. And so you can probably know why I'm here. So I'm also a volunteer. I wanted to put that out. I'm on a commission and I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission. And so we meet in this room, we have recorded sessions and we do all these things as well. So I know the process. I also wanted to come to your meeting before we went to council, which is on the 22nd. Of course, you know all about that. There are a number of people that will be there, just so you would be prepared for that. Here are my questions for you. First, and I don't expect an answer here. These are just things I would hope for you to discuss in this. And I think there will also be a number of people listening to these recordings after this. So maybe they might be expecting you to address some of these issues. Has the school district itself, has it provided any guidance or comments to your proposed ordinance? I say that because when I moved to Mason Avenue on, let's see, in 2002, we talked to the school about the problems we were having on our street with school parking. I have some letters with the school, and basically we had proposed that they close the campus because at that time the students were right across the street. So they were having their lunch hour on our street. It was a big party. I mean, it was trash. It was really a nuisance for us. Plus, we didn't have anywhere to park on our street because the other side of the street had already had an ordinance that had been in effect since 1965. So that was a long-standing ordinance of no parking during school days for a particular set of time. So I'd like to know what your experience has been talking with the school district. The second one is how many comments have you gotten from anyone other than the high school parking issue about this ordinance? Because this is a sweeping ordinance. This ordinance will result in every single street being analyzed. But it seems like from those of us is that you're like a laser beam about the 6 streets that surround the high school. That seems to be what's driving this ordinance. So we would like to know what kind of comments you've gotten from the community other than those 6 streets. Or I guess from students too. Well, that's probably what you've gotten already. And then the third question is, given that it's a sweeping bill, have you done a cost study for the cost that this is going to cost the city? Where will the resources come to implement this action? It's going to be pretty significant. It's going to cause a lot of analyzing. You go down into Old Webster, Old Orchard, there's parking restrictions all over there. There's 50 pages of parking ordinances. And I think I heard Carrie mention that in the last meeting that you had last month about the extent of parking ordinances that there already
So
are.
Doug, we're
Yeah.
past 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly summarize what else you had to say?
I was just gonna say. On the issue of cost. Historic Preservation Commission. We would love to do some education of the importance of preservation of houses. We can't get the money from the city. The city is laying people off. They're not helping us. And so you are going to take an enormous amount of police resources to do this.
Okay,
If you put it in writing too, then like what you've got written down, then we can all see it in writing too, because it gets passed around to all of us. If you missed anything you really wanted to say.
Oh, okay.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
you can have mine.
thank you all. And you're certainly welcome to stay
Okay.
or go as you need.
Oh,
Thank
okay, okay.
All right,
We will also put this in writing, of course, to the city council, which there will be a number of those.
Yeah.
But we'll do it for you too. Yeah,
thank you.
and I'll do this.
Okay. We are at old business and I wanted to quickly run through the items on our action item list. If there are any updates. We delayed action last time on the traffic quieting on North Elm, and I think that's nothing's changed there.
Quick question on
Yeah.
that. Actually, something has changed because the traffic study that we asked for on South Elm was to compare the
okay,
traffic over here and over here.
right,
So that's something that we've gotten that traffic study now, and I haven't really analyzed the numbers. But that was a big part of, our, why we wanted that study to see, because 2 lanes.
Yeah.
4
4
lanes,
lanes, right.
and is it the same amount of traffic? Because, so I think that has changed, but I think we need an action step of maybe for our next meeting to compare those
Okay, so,
numbers. Would you agree with that?
all right, so I'll make a note to make that part of the agenda for the next meeting.
Real quick question, Anne, do you know what this is the speed limit on South Elm? Is that
25?
25? That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay. The second item is consistent policy, shared parking, okay, so we're gonna talk about that. Third one, complete streets, any update?
Yeah. In our last meeting, we discussed bringing TrailNet in
Uh-huh,
to do educate, since we're sort of running into some roadblocks, so to speak, of moving this forward, that maybe we need some educational sessions.
okay,
I did hear back from the mayor that really thinks that that's a good idea.
okay,
And I think we talked about the departments and the city council and the public. And her comment was, do we want to have 2 sessions? One that's for city council, staff, and maybe some other commissions that overlap, like sustainability and green space and some of those. And do we want to have a second one that would be a public education thing, or do we want to put it all into one? So I think that's something for us to decide how we want to go forward with that. Do we imagine bringing TrailNet in to do one big educational session that would include all those components?
okay.
Or would we have 2, one that would be sort of internal and one that would be for the public?
Would you wanna take a moment now?
Sure.
Any thoughts, anybody?
I'd like to find out how Kirkwood did it. Because I know they went through the whole hullabaloo and they wanted to be very transparent and have a lot of the public on board. So I think it'd be useful to hear from them.
Yeah, and I think what theirs was, they're so much farther ahead in a lot of ways. I think this is more like an educational,
Okay.
what does complete, I think what we're running into, people, and sort of along the comment we had just now, how much is this gonna cost? Well, this is really a philosophy of how you go forward and how you look at projects going forward as opposed to saying it's gonna cost $5 million a year.
Right.
So I think there's some education, what the people don't really know what that means. What does complete streets mean? And then what specifically could it be, how could it be tailored for Webster Groves?
So
I guess that's what I heard in Ann's question though is, did Kirkwood do anything in education?
Yeah.
the question I have is there value in bringing the city or the organization and all of us up to speed first,
Mhm.
as opposed to just all having one big meeting, public and staff? Is there an advantage, do you think?
I think it would be good to have 2 sessions. Personally,
It's more of our time, but I agree with you, and I think it might be wise to do it with the city folks first and then do a public once we've learned from each other in the first session.
I like
Clark
that.
is-
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, is TrailNet willing to come in and do this for free, even if it's 2 meetings?
and I haven't talked to them because I just heard back, from the mayor last Friday. So I haven't talked to, I didn't even know if there was an appetite for the city to do this, so I haven't talked to them, so I think that's a good question, and they might have their own, and again, this isn't really specific stuff, this is sort of a 30,000 foot overview of what does complete streets mean, what does it look like, and how could Webster Groves move forward with it?
Okay.
But I think that's a good question for them.
You know what, Cindy
I think
will know. Sorry, real quick, Carrie, I was gonna say, I think Cindy will know how they did it in Kirkwood. Weren't they very involved?
So I will call.
And I think she knows some folks in Kirkwood who were pretty vocal and effective.
Who's that? Cindy?
Cindy.
Cindy.
At TrailNet. I just met her once on the phone because I wanted to learn what they do and she
She's
was
their
so
executive
nice.
director.
She's their executive director.
Terry, did you have another comment?
I was just thinking, I know I bring this up all the time, but we still have some funds sitting out there and this could be a really great use of those funds. So,
For this meeting?
yeah, I think especially for educating the public and or
Yes.
council. I mean, our funds, I'd have to go back and look at what they're for, but I think they're for safety. I don't know. They were the traffic commission, they were funding that we got during COVID to use, on traffic and issues that we were supposed to share with sustainability. So this,
For
Yeah.
you three especially, and I know that you're very familiar with complete streets, but the philosophy is that the streets are not just for cars. So streets are for everybody, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're a motorist, whether you're a cyclist. So the design and things going forward, all take that into consideration when you're looking at projects going forward and how you're treating. It's a real philosophy, in terms of traffic calming ideas and all kinds of different things in there to say, roads were built. Some were just built to get people through. It's just not a safe situation when you're in a community. So
do we have a motion to?
I don't think we need a motion. I will, I guess we do, whether we want to have one meeting or two.
Yes.
I will make a motion that assuming there's no extra cost, that we work with David to schedule a in-house meeting,
Okay,
followed by a public meeting,
okay,
with the purpose of introducing what Complete Streets is and how Webster Groves might move forward with that.
okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yes.
I'm confused.
I thought it was. You probably get that all the time.
All in favor?
I.
Okay, so you gotta go. Next item traffic calming along South Elm, and that I think we're all again waiting on traffic data.
That's the
Oh,
data.
that's the data you gave us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. So, and that's on the agenda for next time, so we
Yes.
can move on. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I did a little bit of something, had chatted with Ann a couple of times. So it's not the level of proposal, it's just kind of a thought, but I think since we're not meeting in December, we're not meeting again until January. It may be something for Ann to check out with your neighbors.
Mhm.
You know, so not giving up on Carrie's proposal, but an alternative to think about. Is 2 narrow lanes with bicycle lanes on each side. The question is, are neighbors willing to give up parking? Nobody parks there, but are they
Mhm.
willing to? So can I give folks a copy? It doesn't need any more discussion tonight, but it would just be for Ann.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're suggesting that since we don't have a chance to talk about this tonight and we won't have a meeting.
Right.
We wouldn't talk about this again until January.
Right.
And so in the meantime, you're suggesting that group of neighbors
Right.
could come together with a proposal or with.
No, just for their thoughts on, just for her to get feedback, because
Well, yeah, okay.
the currently there are no parking restrictions on Elm. But
Right.
like Ann says,
Mhm.
is it only your mother-in-law that parks? there?
Yes.
I've never seen a car parked on Elm.
Uh-huh.
I
But
just saw one on my walk over here.
you did tonight.
It was a van. but it
Oh,
was-
that wasn't, uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's in the wide part, though,
It's
right?
pretty rare.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous. Yeah, so if we
Okay.
have- and are we decidedly not having a meeting in December?
Historically, that's. right.
Holidays, all right.
Okay.
One quick note I want to point out,
Yes.
the minimum width for a bike lane is 5 feet. So we may not have the street width to do 2 driving lanes and 2 bike lanes, just FYI. But you know, we could look at something like a 2-way cycle track instead of a parking lane, something like that. So just throwing that out there. So that thought had crossed my mind as well, but the width isn't there to do that by guidelines. So to do 2 bike lanes.
I would say this is very similar. I was just on South Grand over the weekend, and so just north of 44, they have a 3-foot bike lane, you know, going through the St. Louis University Medical Campus all the way up to the.
Did you say 3 foot?
Yeah, so if you're on Grand going to SLU for any games, check out their bike lanes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, parking on Newport. Tabled until we talk about, okay, complete streets, that's what that was. Next one. Lower speed limit on Kirkham. You're still waiting on data for that one too, I think.
Next on the agenda.
Okay. And finally. To develop a standard process for citizen requests. May not have had a chance to do anything with that.
I figured we wouldn't have time for it tonight anyway, we're already.
Yeah.
We're running late already.
And I
Okay.
also thought we could do something to let people know we have received their request, whether people have attended the meeting.
Yes,
Or gotten in touch with the mayor, or can contacted us directly, so just so they hear that we've heard their requests or their comments,
Right.
so I will work.
in order for, this is sort of off the topic a bit. In order for that to work, do you imagine a little slip that each visitor would fill out with their address and so that we could easily get back in touch with them?
Isn't it, would it be in the minutes or the notes?
Well, the names,
Oh,
I would
okay.
think
Give
public-
their address.
yeah.
Public comments are different than tracking.
Well,
requests, right?
not really. I think the idea was that it would give us a mechanism to follow up on the public comments that we get. We don't now have any formal mechanism for that. And so we listen, but unless somebody has a particular issue, we kind of move on. So, and I feel uncomfortable with what we have today.
The
So-
people don't hear us circling
So,
back.
I mean, would it be acceptable for people to sign a sheet when they come to council?
Well, we have to
Okay.
find out what the rules are about that.
Okay.
Okay, but I
That
think
would be
that's,
helpful.
it would be very helpful. Yeah.
Well, voluntarily versus required, right? Might be a question.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you don't have to do it to speak,
Exactly.
but,
Right.
I mean, I'm asking.
If you want feedback, I think that's
Yeah,
right. You can
right.
choose. Well, because informally, you and I don't know each other and we exchanged numbers the first time we met, 'cause we're like,
Yeah.
same goals.
I think the best way of handling that is if there is a comment that you want to handle or to follow up on, just request if they would be willing to give their contact information, and then you can follow up. Do it individually rather than making a per se rule for everyone. That way you don't detract from people wanting to just give a comment, provide their name and move on. But those that want to have a follow up, you can do that independently.
I think that's a good idea because then we would have a record that someone specifically wanted us to pursue this.
Mhm, mhm.
And people are required to give their name and
Right,
address.
anyway.
Yeah.
for comment,
Okay.
So.
This is for later, but we can discuss later. My immediate thought is a Google form on our website, and then they could even say, do you want to be contacted? They would have to be required to put name and address, right? And then, do you want follow-up?
Give people.
Yeah.
I'm certainly open to that, but we gotta
Yeah.
have something that someone could walk in the door
Yes.
right now and
Right,
You would have to be careful about your Google Doc though, because anything involving the meeting has to be official record, it has to be kept.
the form, we could print them, we could print the
Yeah,
forms
we
or
could just
pass
have
the
them.
forms around via email.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
because the forms are different than docs, but.
Yeah. Okay, I don't wanna
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
let's go.
belabor this. Okay, anybody else have any comments? This is all old business. All right, so I'll update this and have it ready for tomorrow. Okay. The next order of business is to review the third draft of our proposal. And Captain Perks has put that on the screen here for us.
This isn't the third draft of the proposal. This is the third draft of the presentation.
That's right. I'm sorry, the presentation, yes. Okay.
So I glanced at it too. What kind of feedback would be the most useful for those of you who've been pouring so much time and heart into this? What are you
Well,
looking
so
for?
I think our hope is that a little bit of wordsmithing
Okay,
is probably what we're after. But obviously, if there's a big hole, if there's something we've completely missed, we need to know that. Okay? So my proposal is that we'll just walk through this slide by slide unless anyone has an objection.
Now, but maybe before, could we address one of the comments that came up about cost? Is it appropriate at this time or?
Not really. I mean, if it's not directly associated with this presentation, I would like to keep moving.
Okay, I guess I was thinking more of if the presentation doesn't necessarily go into some of the specifics of the proposal. Like, but let's go through, let's do it your way and then we'll maybe that'll come.
Okay, all right. I can be convinced.
I mean, if
No,
we need
I'm
to
not-
add a slide with detail about that, then that'd be important, right? If that's missing.
Well, implementation, I think is.
Well, we're gonna come to that, because that's at the end. Okay, so I put this slide up because I just wanted to have something. As people are gathering, it would be kind of nice to have kind of this introduction up there as a pre-meeting statement, all right? Then I was simply going to thank the city council for allowing us this opportunity to talk. I was going to introduce all of the members of our commission who attend. And then, go ahead. And then I was going to give this very, very brief introduction to how we got to this point. That in fact, there were two problems that came to our attention. One is that residents are concerned about narrow driving lanes and the safety associated with that. And that students have come forward and complained about the difficulty they have in finding a place to park. Okay. And then, and I want to acknowledge Carrie's effort that her research showed that there really aren't any standard criteria that kind of dictate how these restricted parking events happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to include that in terms of transparency. So a citizen, if they didn't know about this, there really isn't a process. Okay, go ahead. And then next, I want to turn this over to Carrie. I put this slide in, Carrie, because I thought it would be helpful if you could show some examples of places where the lanes are very narrow or where emergency vehicles could not get through. But it's up to you whether you want to use this slide or take it out.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I can take pictures right on my street.
Okay, then.
I don't even have to go far.
And Steve, I think you mentioned
Yeah,
that you
Gary,
had some.
somebody sent me a picture today of a school bus, a large school bus backing halfway up the block on.
Yeah,
Swan.
if you would
that'll
send that
help
to
you
me.
out.
Mhm.
That would be great.
I turned down
gosh.
Swan today
Yeah.
from Sylvester and I could barely get through in a car. Someone had parked an SUV at the corner.
Oh,
Way, and literally in a car.
Yeah.
I had trouble getting through. So I don't see
Okay.
how.
This morning at the
Yeah.
high school, the construction guys are parked in the crosswalk. So I'm going from Big Bend toward the high school. And like, listen, I'm in the way and people are waiting for me, but I don't have the right of way, so it's really dangerous. Over there,
So actually,
sorry.
thank you. Okay, one more. Great. Okay. Whoops. Okay, Carrie, I'm assuming that you want to do something like this, but this is your slide, so,
Yeah, I think these are good.
okay. Next one, next. So this is just to show, illustrate what you were gonna be talking about.
Mhm.
Any comments?
By the way, I think I would just speak to a standard driving or a standard parking lane is 8 foot. Standard driving lane is a minimum of, actually it's a minimum of 9 feet, but and maybe, you know, to say in the previous slide, to say that's where these numbers came from, and that we talked to the fire department and we talked to waste management and found out the width of their greatest or widest trucks are 10 feet. So we based it on all of these kind of given factors.
Okay, so it's the standard for a driving lane is 9 feet,
At a minimum, yes.
minimum 9, okay.
Not
wanna be-
Webster, I don't know. I don't know what Webster's minimum is, but that's just, you know,
And then in addition to that, for emergency vehicles and trash vehicles, it really needs to be 10.
yes,
Minimum-
that's,
Minimum 10, okay.
yes, that was the widest width of a Webster Groves Fire Department vehicle, as well as a, I think a waste management vehicle. They were both just under 10, so it wasn't 10 and change or anything like that.
Okay.
So that's where these come from, because less than 18 feet, you would have 10 foot for a truck. If you had 8 foot for parking, you'd have, they'd scrape, you know, or they'd
Right.
come really close. So
Would you like those added to the bottom as an asterisk, or how would you like to do that?
I think I'll just say it. It will be less awkward than I just delivered it, but
Oh, okay, so you don't want to change the slide.
no, I'm just letting the group know that I think we'd give a little bit of background in addition to what's on the slide.
Okay, great. Okay. Any additions to these? I put all of them in there. Go ahead, I think. Okay, so that's going to, so Carrie, any input?
On this slide, on the equity or on the previous?
No, on the ones before.
Nope, I think those are good.
All right.
I think we can move through them pretty quickly.
Okay, so this equity is Clark is gonna speak to. There was some discussion about how to label this slide.
Mhm,
We've referred to it as equity, but we've also referred to it as fairness.
mhm.
Do we have any strong feelings about that?
Well, I put those 3 words there because that's what equity really means. If you look up the definition of equity, it means fair, just, and impartial.
Okay,
So I think it's very clear and important, especially to use that fair word. I
okay,
know people say that life isn't fair, but I think that if you look at history, systems have been put in place that weren't fair. We're trying to say, going forward, we want it to be fair, just, and impartial. So
would you be comfortable if I left those words in the
just the first slide. I mean, I would, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Would you be comfortable if I took the bold out, leave the words, but take the bold out? Because as it's a little bit confusing when I look at it.
So it looked like
I
you
see what
had,
you're doing. You're defining what equity means, but do I need all of that to be bolded?
I don't mind the bold, but the slashes aren't like grammatically proper. I think you need commas or little bullets or something.
Whatever you guys feel comfortable with.
Susan, all right, so
She's.
Yeah,
On something like this, you don't get
yeah,
super grammatical.
yeah, I'm not, I mean, to me, it's just, so it's just visible, it's just visible there to see.
Okay,
What does equity mean? You know, the
Okay.
words fly around, people don't like this word or whatever, well, equity means fair justice.
well, these are your slides, okay? I'm not trying to take it away from you.
I'm just speaking to it, so I don't care how it looks.
Okay.
Commas.
I don't like the next sentence, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, well, okay.
I deleted that slide and you put it back.
So, no, I actually didn't take it out. I never took it out. So, there is a perception that, that we are saying, because we're changing this parking policy, there's a perception that we think that the former leadership, staff, whatever, did the wrong thing.
Mhm.
And I think that just leads to frustration. I don't,
Did you have a chance to look at my
I did.
version of
I
all
did.
this?
do you
Okay.
wanna read what you said there?
Well, I just had bullets and I just said prior leadership was correct to approve restricted parking. I thought that was
Yes.
more clear.
Okay,
And see, my position is that I
It's
would
not
rather
this way,
be
you're
more
saying.
factual than correct. I'm thinking that former decisions were made on one-offs piecemeal. They weren't
I
looked at
understand,
impartially, fair, or just, they were just came to,
I understand, but from the perspective of the city council, and most of these came before the city council. From the perspective of the city council, a group of citizens have come to the city and said, we have a problem. We want our street to be resident only. I think that you know, without making a big deal about it.
I guess I
probably-
wouldn't say correct or incorrect.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just, it just, I think it's more factual. For me, it's like,
Oh,
how
okay.
did this happen? I think
Yeah,
saying something is correct is putting a judgment on
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
I would
okay.
agree with Clark.
Okay, Carrie, I got it, all right,
was right.
okay, so how would we reword this in a way that would
I
be
would
less-
just say how they have, like you just said. In the past, groups of citizens came with, you know, with their particular concern. And decisions were made on a case-by-case basis with
That's a great way to put it, I like that.
I would just put prior city leadership approved restricted parking on a case by case basis.
I
Yes.
love it.
Exactly.
I
All you
love
have to
it.
do is take out the rightly and
Yeah.
that's perfect, then it's factual.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly that's the kind of input I was hoping that we would get to. Okay, great. So are you okay though if I leave this slide in?
Yeah,
Okay.
with those words, absolutely.
Captain Burke's sake.
But
Okay, so then-
I wait, go back. Go back, please. So most of the restrictions that we were looking at are not resident only restrictions. They're time restricted. And that's
We
how they,
understand that,
Mhm.
but rather than spend a lot of time explaining all that differences, they ultimately restrict parking. That's all that matters here.
but they're not allowing only residents to park on them, is my point. The second half of that,
Some do and some don't.
right.
No, but I think what Carrie's saying is you don't need that but. Right? Is that what you're saying, Carrie?
Yeah, I'm saying it's misleading that we're only looking at streets that are resident restricted,
Mhm.
maybe.
You don't have to describe the restriction, just restrictions of any sort,
Mhm.
right? They were all
Mhm.
piecemeal. Whatever they.
So if we take out all of that text and replace it with what Susan just suggested, it's covered, right?
I think so.
What did you say? What is it?
Prior city leadership approved restricted parking on a case by case
Oh,
basis.
right.
Okay, and so that's all I
But
really need.
I would also say I would add with no overarching criteria or I mean, there really wasn't a policy that it was a case by case basis without guidelines.
Do you know that? I mean, are you
I'm
sure
right.
they didn't use a standard of some sort, like a national?
Well, you don't-
We've not uncovered it.
No,
But-
the
Yes, right.
Chief
But
Curtis
they'll
actually
override.
told us.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But I'm wondering how much you wanna ad lib that versus having it in the slides. I don't know.
If the slides get too wordy.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to avoid is, 37 words on the slide.
Well, that was like 3 more. It was just a case without criteria. That was 2 words.
I think you should add it and then we'll just look at it again.
I just think it's important because because laws in any city are historically often arbitrary. Right. And so you're trying to say that we're trying to end that. I mean.
Exactly.
Okay.
I've said my
Okay.
opinion, I'll drop it.
Oh, no. Your input's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
We really try to listen.
So
But the word-
eliminating the last phrase, or is that saying, but
Here's our wordsmith.
I thought you were opposed to that, like everybody was opposed to that being in there at
Yes.
all. So I.
Okay, but you did have 3 words.
But he
you
had
liked
3
that.
ones he wanted to add.
3 words.
Well, it was 2 with that criteria.
We're giving you a word.
Consistent criteria, that's a 3rd one, but
Without criteria,
Consistent criteria.
consistent criteria.
But
Don't
when-
get us off the hook with, was there criteria? Were there?
Can I chime in here really quick?
Yeah,
I really
sure.
like this I like this conversation. I think it's good, but I think we're getting a little bit too much into the minutia. You got to think about who's going to object to this. And it's the people that already have the restrictions. So how do you oppose that? How do you convince other people that this is still good? And I think this really comes down to exactly what this slide says, the fairness or the impartiality, and then the safety issue.
Right.
How can we make more? And I do think you need to address the cost issue, how it's not going to cost Webster Groves anymore. This is going to be when we look at streets and we look at parking in general, our police department and the city manager look at it from the policy and the lines that you guys set forth. So it's really no additional cost. But I just think about who you're trying to convince here, and also the people that are going to be the ones. It's going to be the people that are going to be the most vocal, the ones that are going to be opposed to this, and they live on a street that have it restricted for the past 20 years.
Yep, agree,
Okay.
David, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Okay, are we good with this one? Yep, all right. Thanks.
Now, this one, the only one I have an issue with is this 3rd bullet.
Okay. I
So-
rephrased that a little bit.
I know.
From our conversation the other day, apparently I didn't catch it.
Well, no, so the first bullet is again, just sort of talking through why we should have fairness in mind when we're enacting policy. The second one is that I think this commission believes that streets belong to everybody. The 3rd bullet is that, and how I would reword it is that parking restrictions are appropriate in certain cases. So, if a resident lives in an area that's near a high traffic area, I think it's appropriate to reserve some of that parking for residents. It's appropriate to reserve some parking for people with disabilities. It's appropriate, so there are certain cases that it's appropriate to reserve parking, and this policy is showing how we are going to reserve certain parking for residents.
Okay, all right. That's a different picture than I had when we talked
Right.
last time. I
But
like.
so
that
it's
you-
not, I don't think you have to say that for health card. I think
No,
it's just,
actually, your description was better.
I think it's just, it's appropriate in some cases to reserve parking. And for example, people with disabilities.
Okay.
That would be more of an ADA requirement, wouldn't it? For people with disabilities.
I don't know if there's an ADA requirement for number of city-owned parking spaces. If there's somebody that lives on a street that's maybe.
There is
blocked or
not on
something-
public streets, just for the record.
Okay.
There's not on
Right,
public
alright.
streets.
I thought maybe we could just throw that in there instead
Yeah.
of just saying
I don't
sort
think
of
it
vague
applies, yeah.
appropriate. Okay.
There are in private lots or even public lots, but not on streets.
But I think what we're saying is that it's not a free-for-all.
Yeah,
In some cases, it's appropriate to reserve.
so Clark, what I would suggest is, I will make a second try at this, but but I'll send it to you for your
Okay.
blessing before I.
Or send it to us.
Yeah, or both of you. But I get it now.
Okay.
What you're trying to say.
And then the fourth bullet is.
Okay, we're good.
Now, the next two, I don't feel comfortable talking about these two. Next slides, this one and the next one.
Okay. Well, there's really a question, how badly do we need them?
I think
I
they should
mean-
stay in.
Yeah, those are helpful.
But are they examples or are they, I guess my question is, are these examples of what something could look like, or is this what's in?
This is what's in our policy proposal.
So I think one of you two, or Carrie, maybe you need to speak to these two slides.
If Steve doesn't want, I don't know if we've decided that, but I can. Yes. If
So,
Steve
do
is
you
not,
want-
this was. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, it's a suggestion, it can be adapted, it seemed reasonable, particularly with volumes. Of residents that, aren't parking on streets, it seems reasonable, like, I can see.
So let me suggest another thought. Would it make sense to put them after the end?
I was sort of thinking it was in that transparent, but it is in that fairness section.
I know, but do we really need it to make the point that you're trying to make, I guess?
I think so. I think it's important to say that we're acknowledging that, many existing restrictions are for residents, and there are areas where the residents do heavily utilize on-street parking, and our policy accommodates that by request, with a standard, transparent guideline. And this is it right here in front of you.
So I guess where I was struggling with being able to articulate that is this one in the next slide. What is the numbers for what's
Okay.
high density?
Here's another thought. I'm just trying to make this easier for everybody. If you go to the next slide, Captain Perch, you'll see that on a less, whoops,
Oops.
go back. There,
Keeps
one more
going
time.
on you.
There we go.
There we go.
So this is a dense street. And because it's a dense street, there are more people living on that street with more cars. And therefore, only 25% on either end.
I understand that, but how are you defining what's dense and what's not?
I know, and I really don't want to, I really don't want to get into the weeds that way. Here's my suggestion. What if I take this density thing off and I take these percentages off? And all we're showing is that there is space on either end of the block for residents and space in the middle that's open for others. And if somebody asks the question, I'll put these slides down at the end and we can refer to them during questions and answers.
I think that's good. We can say that it's based on home housing density. Our proposal bases the amount of parking reserved for residents by the density of the housing on that block.
Perfect. If we did that, would that meet your?
It's just, I don't feel comfortable walking through those slides. So sure,
Describing what's going on.
absolutely.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Carrie, are you comfortable talking about these?
Well, here's the problem. We don't have time for Carrie and then
Oh.
Clark and then me and then Carrie and then me.
I assume we're all just standing there. We
Yeah,
just take,
we're just-
I
yeah,
sidestep over to where Clark is standing and jump in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just be standing at the podium.
Okay, if that, I can live with that.
It does, I think, need to say residential higher density street, so.
Okay.
But wait, I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but I think I'm supposed to already know this. So you're literally saying that the parking in the center of the block on one side is available open parking, and 25% on either side plus no parking is only where the residents
Right.
can park. So if you're in the middle of the street near a resident, you can't actually park in front of
That's
your
right.
house.
You cannot.
No,
You
can't.
could,
You can park.
if
there.
you're first, come,
Yeah,
first
it's not,
served.
it's never been the intention to
okay.
eliminate the residents. If
It's
there-
just also open.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what solves the problem.
No, I understand now what you're saying. So if it is open, a student may park there, or a repair truck, or a
Mhm.
visitor
Right.
who's come over for coffee.
Right.
It's open for anybody.
Right.
But nobody
Just
except residents.
Nobody
on
but
site.
residents
I
on
got
the
it.
end.
Thank you.
I got it.
Just like on Lockwood right now, you know, where students park, if somebody parked there as a resident.
Right.
Student can't park there.
If that said open to all, would it help? Because open is always an sort of.
Yes, actually.
Open
sure,
to
I can
all.
move that slide open to all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That middle guy, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, got it. I think I got it. Okay. Okay. And then I was gonna step back up and talk about transparency. So this is to overcome the problem we had with earlier with arbitrary rules. That first of all, there is a standard process. If you're a resident and you believe that you're in a high density traffic area and you would like your area designated as a shared parking area, there will be a process for you to fill out, to follow. Okay, second one. There will be new criteria.
Sorry, can I ask a question about the first one?
Yeah.
Does that mean that to day one, no street would have any of this stuff?
That is right, none.
First request, that street gets it applied, so on, until someday perhaps the entire city is covered.
No, no. It is not the entire city.
What I meant was, if a person asked, if people keep, over
Yes.
time, it would lead to more and more of the city being.
But let me explain what this is really about.
Sure.
I know that a lot of people think this is only about the school. It is not.
Mhm.
Imagine that you live on a street, half a block from a popular restaurant. And every day at lunchtime and at dinner time, your block is completely full and you can't get in and out of your driveway. That's an example. Let's say there's an employer. That your house happens to be a block or so away from a popular employer. And it's jammed full of people who are trying to get to work. It's all the same. It's only applies in areas where the parking density essentially pushes all the residents out.
Right.
That's the problem.
What I'm,
His question was
it's not super
hypothetical.
important here, but
No, I want you to understand what we're doing.
laws that get applied on request become a one-way path. In that it applied, and I'm not complaining of this, it just means, you've already clarified, it starts with none. And as requested, it gets applied, and over time, it probably leads to more, not 100%, but just more. Ideally, where it was required.
I would add to it.
I would hope not.
Well, let me just jump in.
Well, and then after 50 years, that can be cases where the original rule is no longer required anymore, but it's still in place. That's kind of the
I
consequence.
wanted to clarify, we're not doing a law.
I appreciate that.
Well, it is. An ordinance is a law.
Well,
But
It's absolutely a law.
we haven't been calling. it
Okay.
that.
I'm using it generically, so I apologize.
The traffic code,
Anita,
there is information traffic code.
so technically, we are out of time. Now,
Look, this policy, this is a policy, and there's enough discretion in order for the police department and the city manager to effectuate it. I don't think you guys are mandating anything. I think you guys are giving them direction based off of education. So while it's a law, it's a policy now put in on the books. It's not a mandate. I don't think it's a directive. I think it is a way to educate and to use it going forward as we look at our streets.
And just to say where I'm at on this, I agree. I think it's, we should call it a policy. We should refer to it as a policy because in the end, that's what it's gonna work out to be. I know we keep saying ordinance, but I don't think that's really the right term.
David, how do you picture it being retroactive? To areas that are now residential only?
What do you mean by retroactive? I'm sorry.
In other words, the city, if we're trying for equity and not to keep pushing students further, So
Yeah.
how does it go back to,
Well, I think the
areas?
easy way to explain it, is, you can't fix everything with one foul swoop usually, especially when it comes to something like our roads, when we have, I think 93 square miles of land here in Webster Groves. So in my mind, it's about moving forward in a positive direction based off of equity, based off of fairness. And yes, it's not going to apply everywhere automatically, but it will apply as we go forward. That way citizens know going forward, hey, what are the criteria? What are the positions that the city is going to take? And how do we either combat them? How do we change it? Or how do we abide by it? It's giving the citizens the ability to say, okay, this is the city trying to apply things going forward. Now, anything in the past, yeah, we should try to correct, but it's not going to happen overnight.
You'll leave them in place is really, you're not erasing them all, you're leaving them in place.
No.
Correct.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
mean, without someone raising it, we would be effectively leaving the old policy in place, right?
Now, realistically, in the real world, somebody's gonna step forward. For all those blocks near the high school, somebody's gonna come forward and those are gonna get addressed pretty quick. But we have not decided on any priority or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important, right? Like
Right.
it goes to that discretion. It goes to that discretion that you're still giving the experts, the police department, the city manager, the ability to use their discretion to create safety, to create equity. You're just laying down a guideline that is informed by the constituents, the voters, the people that actually live here.
Right. Amen.
Well, and also, David, that's a guideline because our group is the one who screens the first request. We're the first,
Yeah.
I guess, point of contact for these requests. So this would be our
Absolutely.
guidelines on how we screen them. Okay. And
Yeah.
my thought was, this goes into effect. And then as far as anything retroactive, it's, we can compare an existing street and an existing restrictions to this new policy upon request. So,
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
Okay.
So
Questions?
it's still
Anybody?
citizen driven. I mean, I feel like this is really good. I
Okay.
don't know if I feel, I can talk to people, I'm not supposed to talk to you off the record, but I think the most captivating thing for me, like, I don't have a huge dog in this fight. So when I was first hearing you guys talk about this, I'm like, yeah, parking sucks by high schools, always. But what really was affecting, I thought, what really moved me was the fact that it's just been willy-nilly over the years and the fact that it's been case by case basis and it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So it's like the residents who asked first got good treatment, the ones who are close. I mean, so this just evens things out and that's really compelling, I think.
So if the high school.
I wanted to just raise one more thing. The most comments I have received personally about this is from Holy Redeemer. Holy Redeemer, I mean, their pastor is telling the parishioners to write comments, to come to the meeting. So I do think it's important that you guys look at Mason and Joy and address that potentially, because I think that's what most of your comments are going to be on Tuesday night.
David, I looked at Bristol and on Gore, there are no parking restrictions in that drop off area.
I think that's a great response.
Yeah.
I really do.
Okay.
One quick question. David, are we responding to questions at this meeting? Would this be a
No, you won't.
presentation where we?
You won't,
Okay.
but it's persuasion, right? And I'm just,
Yes, right.
I see where the obstacles are gonna lie and where people are
Right.
gonna raise it. And one of them is going to be Holy Redeemer and the student drop off and pickup.
But
And it's a
Dave-
fair concern, but I think that
David?
it can be addressed, right?
David, isn't our presentation is to the work session, and then the comments will come at the city council meeting, right?
Correct,
Oh,
correct.
And we won't be entering any.
Time out.
No. But
So
it's
my-
future rebuttal, right?
I had a conversation with the city manager. She told me we had 15 minutes for a presentation and 15 minutes for questions.
From
and answers.
city council members.
Oh,
from
not
council.
from city council.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
We will get questions.
Yeah, but we won't get questions.
No, later on, they'll beat us up after the meeting, but
Correct.
With their words.
And I want to add, I also checked out whoever is on stage. That I watched Holy Redeemer's drop off ends before the high school starts. So high school, I think, starts at 8:30 time. The peak of that traffic is after Holy Redeemer students are already.
in school. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well,
That's good to know.
You might be called upon to.
Yeah,
bear
you
witness.
got good intel.
I checked it out.
Use
Okay,
your recon.
can we keep moving here?
Yep.
We're past
Yep.
time. So,
I'm sorry, I have one, this is, you'll be
Yeah.
able to answer it very quickly. Let's say some event happens, like the high school closes and all these rules are set in place on all these streets. Is there a mechanism for their reevaluation?
That's
We-
what we're doing now.
they're always open for
Well,
reevaluation.
they've had the rule applied and now the residents are saying, could you remove this now because we don't need it anymore?
But they can always come forward and say, we've changed our minds. We take it off.
Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't reserve parking for high school students.
No, it doesn't matter what the cause of, if the rules got applied, then is there a mechanism for the rules to be unapplied when circumstances change? Or is it like a sidewalk that get poured
It's a
50
great
years
question.
ago?
No, it's a
that-
great
Yeah.
question. Yes, it does not need to be forever. We can change it back if we choose to.
So citizens request, effectively, the same thing happens again.
I think so, in reverse.
So just so you know, similarly, a lot of these restrictions went in place when the high school was being utilized by Webster U. And Webster U didn't have its parking garage. So there was a lot more spillover traffic by college students. Yeah.
Okay, Captain Brooks, may I have, okay, so finally, if we decide that shared parking is appropriate, we would then make a recommendation to this, I'm on the wrong slide, aren't I?
No.
Okay, never mind. Yeah,
I
so
do have
there, okay, it's all right. Anybody have a question about this? I'm getting ahead of
Yes.
myself a little bit.
I'm curious, so we're not referring to shared, is this shared parking, is this policy only talking about people who want the resident only restrictions? Because we don't really define anything as shared parking policy. So I feel like we've introduced a new term here.
No, we've always said it was shared parking, that this was about sharing parking between residents and others.
So is this referring only to a resident request for resident only parking? This slide, or is it a request for restricted parking? Because in my mind, you can come to us and say, I would like no parking on one side of my street based on street width. But then, or residents, but it's a whole nother, it's step 2. If you also want some of that reserved for resident only. I don't see every street saying we want resident only parking on a portion
No,
of our street.
I think this is all about anyone who lives on a street that is heavily crowded with parking. That's what this is about.
Okay. So we haven't said this, put this policy or this process out there for someone who comes and wants to request restricted parking only.
Right, if I live on a street that is not busy, but I feel it's still not safe for the cars that do park there, and I just want the one side only restriction.
Right. Chris, I'm just saying, I feel like we're putting a slide here that we didn't put for the other half of the policy.
Well, I get it. Okay, what do we think about that?
I think we could just say proposed parking policy will include standard guidelines for requesting parking restrictions.
I agree.
I mean, it applies to both halves. I just think
Yeah.
we could take the shared part out.
That, I think the shared, like, 3 bullets of shared there makes it, and the first one here, the prepared shared parking policy. Makes it seem like that's all it's about.
Okay, that's a fair, I get it. Are there any unintended consequences? See, my thinking was that this would only be applied in certain fairly small areas where there's very congested parking. If we now open it up to the entire city, and anybody who thinks their driving lane is a little too skinny, we're gonna get inundated with people coming
So the
forward.
traffic code now always says 75% of the parkers have to be non-residents. So that's already in the code. So when you talk about congested, it's already defined in the code.
Okay.
So that's 75% of it. So that can be measured. And we can, if we have a request and 75% of the parkers are not non-residents.
Well,
we
but
don't-
the point that's being made here is that they want to ignore that part and only focus, so what if I?
Not ignore.
No,
Not
not ignore,
ignore.
just
No.
say, this is a parking policy as opposed to
a
defining
shared
it as a
parking
shared parking
Right,
policy.
right.
What do we think about that?
I mean, we have all those slides about widths and everything. Why would you?
No, I'm just worried about this could be overwhelming. Let's say that it's a narrow street. But no one ever drives on it. No one ever parks on it. What difference does it make?
We don't
Because then you-
recommend it to go forward.
Yeah,
When it comes to TAC, we say, no, it doesn't meet the criteria.
Exactly.
And we might say like, we need to do a count, we need to do a study and we'll get back to, I mean, we still get
Just
to
like we do
say.
with stop signs.
no,
and-
that's the whole point of the street width thing.
Yeah,
If they
see,
come to
that's-
us and their street is 16 feet and they're asking for parking restrictions, then our policy says they get them.
Right.
End of story.
Oh, good,
But this
okay.
does apply. I mean, Chris, I think what I'm hearing you say is this doesn't apply to the whole city. Of course it does.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm saying, as it is written here. We first determined that there's a lot of parking on your street. And once we know there's a lot of parking on your street, then we know that you meet the criteria for this to happen. If there's no parking on your street, why are we worried about the street width?
Safety.
No. because
Safety.
there are no cars parked on it.
Well, then I don't think anybody will come to us if they don't have a concern about
Well, we have
safety
the
on their
example
street.
carry of valid. And so I think we had the question raised from a resident and did they withdraw it? Because, I mean, we had to think about 50% of residents need to want it. And I think whoever brought that
Oh, is
to
that
us,
the case? 50%?
yeah. And I think that whoever presented it withdrew the request. Didn't that happen about 6 months ago?
Yeah, and I want to
That's a
say, I
narrow
think I've
street.
said this, that's not in the ordinance, so I don't know if that was an unwritten policy for our group previously, but it's not written down anywhere that they need 50% of requests. The other point I wanted to make too is if someone comes
in
and
the
wants resident only, it's not in the code, it's not. If someone comes and wants restricted parking for residents, by the code, they should also have passes in their windows. So they've got to really want it and be willing to go get the passes and put them in the windows.
My understanding is they do that.
Right. My understanding is too, but I'm saying if you're thinking that every street's going to come and want resident only parking, I think that might be a bit of a deterrent to
No,
that
no.
request.
I don't think that's the issue. I
It's
think,
50.
I think the issue is, do we allow anyone who wants your wider streets? Do we make that open to anybody? And I'm struggling with that right now.
I think it has to be. That's the equity portion. Although we probably do want to have some sort of policy written about how many people on the street need to be part of that request, just for the record. But, you know,
Okay.
remember when you talked to the city administrator, she said, you know, some of these things not everything has to be concrete right now as far as implementation.
That's right, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, where are we on this?
I just suggested on this slide, we take the word shared out from everywhere. And maybe change it to restricted.
Let's do that. Okay. Clark, you were
Yeah, I agree with that.
restricted? Okay. I think this was a great discussion. This is a complicated thing that I really do. I think this is what it's all about. If we get this right, it's really gonna help.
My concern is that if it looks like we're unclear on some issues that are really essential or some fine points that are essential, it would make us look weaker, like we haven't thought it through enough. So is it important to have another work session before this?
Well,
or-
let me tell you, the only thing that we couldn't really get resolved. There was an issue, and I don't know if you were at that meeting, but there was a big issue about how difficult it will be to change the current ordinances. Because the current ordinances were not put in a organized manner.
Yeah.
They were really all over the place.
Yeah.
And there was even a concern that we couldn't possibly implement this because of the mess that the ordinances were in. Okay.
So
Which is why it-
contradictions and
Yeah,
things.
exactly. So I took that question to the city manager. And she said to me, if this is what the public wants, we will figure out a way that we can overcome that with the
Mhm.
way the new policy is written.
Mhm.
Don't worry about that right now.
Mhm.
In other words, don't have every I dotted and every T crossed,
Okay.
because that will take forever. Let's,
Okay.
let's seek the public's interest. And if we achieve that, we'll figure out a way to make it work.
That's,
That,
thank
that's
you.
the word, that's what I got. And so I'm trying to live by that statement.
So something here confuses me in that if these are guidelines that you would, I would think you'd want them applied everywhere possible in terms of like width, one parking, one driving, or two driving.
It's when evaluating, exactly, when evaluating a thing that comes in here.
I mean, if these rules become in place, or whatever this is, if it goes in place, does this impede you on doing complete streets because you're like, oops, bicycle lanes now?
Well,
required in-
actually,
Yeah.
that's a really perfect example. And what we say when we talk about complete streets is that it is a philosophy that we want to imply throughout the city as we have the opportunity. So when an intersection is changed, we fix it. When a new street is put in or widened, we fix it.
Minimizing cost.
Exactly. This is the same thing. I don't think we can say that on day one, we're suddenly going to change all the signage. Think of all the signs that, you know, that are gonna have to be changed throughout the city when streets go from being parking on both sides to parking on one side, or from parking on one side to no parking at all. That would be a massive undertaking. And I don't think that's what we're trying to solve.
No, I understand.
No, again,
You
this is
felt-
just by request. It's just by request.
Right.
Because one of the main things we do is field citizen requests. And we are trying to come up with a way, sorry, this is already
No.
obvious. We're just
No.
trying to come up with a very concrete, clear, equal way to respond to everything.
Well,
It's not willy-nilly.
yes, no, everything you're saying is helping me, okay, but let's say that you decide that a street will be parked on one side only, 2 lanes of driving, and it meets all these criteria. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, and our bike lanes. Oh, oops, we just did that one. Now we want to put a bike lane in, and now we've already decided on that street. I mean, how?
That's
do you-
life. That's life. This is an imperfect science.
Yeah. I mean, just
Okay,
how any
okay.
other bike lane goes in, at the time you put a bike lane in, you consider the potential route and the implications of that route and where it fits and where it doesn't, and that's how you plan and choose your route and make any changes that you need to make to get it in the, you know, in the best place.
So here's what I'm hearing, that we're gonna apply this as needed, but only upon request.
Mhm, mhm.
And so if 100 neighborhoods come through the door with their desire to make their streets safer, we handle them as they come.
Mhm.
What
We're
else
not
can-
proactively
what else
putting
can we
this on
do?
anybody. We're letting the citizens ask
Come to
for
us.
equal treatment, safety, et cetera.
And Carrie, the section that the 50% comes from is section 60.567 of the related topic, permit parking district boundaries upon receipt of a petition signed by more than 50% of the residents of a block. So that's where that 50% figure comes from.
5, 6, 7,
What could be changed now, right?
but that's only in the permit parking districts.
Right. Well,
So-
it's related to what we're talking about, though.
Right,
And
well,
that is-
well, no, it's not, because permit parking districts, there's only like 4 in the whole city. So remember, this is the part where I said it gets confusing, because really at this point, resident-only parking is supposed to be constrained to certain areas by code, by ordinance. So anyway, I mean,
Okay.
we can get into that on the side, but that's, it's really weird. They don't
Okay.
really have an open permit parking policy citywide. It's only in congested or residential districts, which are limited to certain areas. Anyway, remember that time I showed a map? I had mapped them all out
Yes.
because I'm that kind of a nerd. So yeah,
it up,
anyway, yeah.
Okay, so I'm feeling the pressure of time here. I
Yeah.
would like to finish before 7. So I will change these to restricted parking. Okay, and I may need to reword them, but I will get this draft out to you quickly so that we can all look at it one more time before we. Okay. Can we move on to the next one? Okay, so then there's this question and answer period. And then what I did was I added a bunch of slides that I thought we might possibly need later. Let's go ahead. So this has to do with, if the question comes up about students and why do we need to worry about parking for students? Yeah, first go ahead. So challenge number one, notice that Webster Groves High School is completely surrounded by these other organizations that also require parking. And so that forces all of our students to park right in here. Nobody's gonna walk across Big Bend, or it's unlikely. Okay, so right here is very, very congested. Okay, next
Over time, we might fix that.
yeah, well, we hope, but there aren't enough, I'll come back to that. Okay, so the growth in the number of student drivers. Back in the 60s, 16% of high school students came by car to school. Today, 32% of high school students drive to school. So the number has doubled. Webster Groves, the space available for students has not doubled. Webster Groves has,
Did that say 60%?
no.
Yeah, it says.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, that
You're-
sounds really low.
You're right. 60% is how many
Yes, yes.
come to school by car, but the number who drive to school is 32%. Now, according to the study that I looked at, 32%, I'm really getting my numbers goofed up here. 32% of high school students nationwide drive to school. If they have a driver's license. Webster has 1,061 students that are over 16 and have driver's licenses. So if I multiply that out, that means Webster Groves High School needs 350 parking places. They have 210. So now you can see there's a discrepancy of 140 parking places. We don't have them, which is why this is so difficult for students. Captain Burst, could you advance me one more? Okay, here's another big change, and it has to do with family dynamics. Back in the day, mom took the kids to school. Mom is now working. Mom might be one of a part of a single parent family, or she might be part of a two-income family. She's going to work. Somebody has to drive the kids to school. So in many cases, they turn to their junior and senior student child to drive him or herself to school and possibly even drop off the younger kids. So this is a different world we're in. We need more parking.
Let me ask,
Yes.
is it considered safer for a parent to drop off a child or for a student to park themselves? What I mean is, we heard complaints of people dropping off a ticket and causing danger. Yet parking is also a problem. What I mean is, I don't know, those two things just are in my mind as that might pull against each other, or is it even relevant to us?
All we're saying here is there aren't enough parking
Oh,
places
no, I understand that,
for
but
all the kids that are gonna drive.
At
Big
Hickson,
picture.
there's no choice, though. At Hickson, there's no choice. The kids can't drive themselves. So it
Right,
is two, I think they're two different situations.
And I would argue that, I mean, this is philosophical, but to say we need more parking is the death of a lot of cities in a lot of
yeah,
different ways.
I mean,
So I just be careful about that one. I think these are reality. You're just having statistics,
Okay.
but to say we need more
Well, that
parking.
was a poor statement on my part.
Well,
We don't need more parking. Actually, we need less parking, but the reality is, we're making it very difficult for young people to get to school. That's the bottom line.
I have to go put Francis to bed, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Ann.
Yeah.
There.
Okay, I got 5 minutes left.
Yep.
Last item. Okay, the fourth issue has to do with this restricted parking, and you've all seen this slide. Carrie, this is the slide I think you got for us. So this shows all the streets that have restrictions today.
And
it's-
missing some, right, Steve?
Yeah, there are a few missing. But this is why it's so difficult, because if I'm a student and I can only park right in here, you can see that these streets make it very difficult. These restrictions make it very, very.
there are winners and losers as far as residents go.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Not only that, I think earlier in one of the early slides, Clark, it might have been one of yours where you talk about specifically these restrictions were applied on a case by case basis. I think this potentially could go in that slide to just give that show exactly what we mean by that. Like every one of these colors is a different restriction and they're not even all on here.
You want it in there?
I don't know. It's up to
Yeah, right.
it's up to Clark. It's his slide.
Right.
But I think it's a good way of just showing our comment about, you know, they got applied so I don't know, unevenly or sporadically that every block has different restriction. So I don't know.
absolutely agree with you, Carrie. The problem I'm having is that we only have 15 minutes.
I just meant as an image alongside maybe that text in that slide.
Yeah.
But it's up to you guys. I just think images are good to hit home.
Right, I'm fine either way.
Yeah.
I mean, you can either say we have an image or it can verbalize it, so whatever. If you can put it, Steve, next to it, that's, or Chris, that's fine.
Okay.
It'd be nice to see a similar drawing with what the post would look like.
You mean the restriction?
Yeah, that, you know, it would be even across the entire thing, or at least to some radius, probably would be even.
I think, well, and that's by request, again, by request only. So I don't think we
Look,
want to
how
open
could you
that can of
possibly
words.
imagine that Maple people or whatever that street is, plant maybe, aren't gonna make their request on day one?
Oh, no, I think they are, but I think we would be very presumptuous to assume that every one of these streets, yeah.
Okay, could I have the next one? Okay, so then I put in this statement about implementation, and this is based on,
We talked about.
yeah, we talked about that. So this is kind of the implementation process that we agreed we would likely go forward with, let's say. Any question about that?
Yeah, again, I think we need to take the shared out of here because
Yeah,
we're
I-
only
Yeah,
referring
I
to
can
half
figure
of
that.
it.
I
Yeah.
can do that. It's
Is
now
this-
a restricted
there-
parking policy.
Yeah.
Shared but restricted, how's that?
Yeah. Or, yeah, I don't know. I think it would just be, well, whatever.
Okay.
I just
we'll
think we're
figure it
only
out.
referring to half of it. Yeah, when we say shared.
I know it's not part of this. All right, never mind, thank you.
Don't hesitate. You have
The,
one
the
minute.
only
long
thing,
run.
the only thing is that the shared says so much about
What is
one of our
that?
driving forces. I mean, it is equity.
In this
And
case,
losing that,
it would be intriguing, sorry.
no, I just dread, or I'm sad to lose that emphasis.
What have you said, restricted or shared?
That really gets confusing.
Yeah. I feel like when we're only talking about shared though, that's only half of it. Cause you know.
All right, let me think about that one.
Yeah.
We don't have to resolve that tonight.
It would be intriguing to see a map that showed these streets would be yellow, meaning single side and 2 lanes.
But we don't know that. We have not measured them.
No, I understand that. And so I said I would defer my question. You said, go ahead and present, say.
Okay.
So I mean, the wish would be to see Webster is that these are the potential outcomes. It would be nice, it's a wish to know.
And I support what you're saying, but we have
Yes, no.
a week to finish these slides and prepare and.
Well, in reality, limited, I mean, we're not trying to apply this everywhere. We're
Right.
trying to identify when, put the policy is when.
Okay.
If you wish to prevent
So,
unintended consequences. it's nice
This
to
is it. If there are other slides that I need to add, I'm interested.
know. You said this was optional, because it seems like one of the most powerful slides.
Okay.
Well, Chris has been back and forth on implementation.
But I think implementation comes down to the city doing it. We don't have the power.
See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
We're just a commission making recommendations.
Right.
They're the implementers.
Yeah.
And so,
So it's here if they say, well, how are we gonna implement this? Well, glad you asked. But if it's, hey, they realize it's their business.
You're saying this might not be true.
What we're saying is that we can make a recommendation to the city council.
Yeah.
But this is the part that we don't control.
Right.
We don't control implementation.
Which is only the last bullet point. No, fourth bullet. That's at
Yeah.
step 4, they choose to or not, but all the rest of this is how it's intended to occur. They may not take action on number 4, but it is what's intended, isn't it?
Yeah. that's a good point.
Well, my suggestion is that we leave it to the end, and if somebody asks about it, we will definitely show this slide.
Yeah, I defer to all of you. I'm not trying to.
No.
be-
No,
The difficult part with the implementation is that without city council approval and the enacting of an ordinance for each individual specific block, individual location, parking restriction, shared anything, it wouldn't apply because then the police department has no legal authority to enforce the parking on that street without the actual ordinance, the law being in place. So to do what you're saying is an astronomical task.
Oh,
Try
what am I
and do
saying?
that, to measure show a
No,
map
no,
of
yeah,
every
yeah,
street and then to show where this would work and what it would work and all that. Because we need to have only by request, because then it's a process to get that restriction or that shared put in place on that street, and then the ordinance enacted by the city council, then we have legal authority to enforce it, because otherwise you just have signage up
Yeah.
that is unenforceable.
I have a question for you. If there are 50 pages of ordinances, which, and I'm sure there's more, if we
More
add
than that.
stop signs and everything
There's
else,
more than that.
how hard is it for your officers to actually say, let me grab the book and see what's going on here?
Not
Signage.
the signage, we go by the signage because the signage
Okay.
was enacted by the ordinance or put up because the
Right.
ordinance was in place, and then
That's
it's
helpful to
50
know.
pages
Thank you.
of ordinance that is in there, and the traffic code is
Yeah.
50 pages of.
Thank you.
that's a great
Absolutely.
point.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any more to present.
Get rid of that.
Does anybody have a thought, concern, another issue, something I need to add?
Chris, I do. Sorry. And I guess the last few slides where you're talking about, kind of some background on the why parking around the high school is important or needed. I think we should add something in there. We've heard several comments from the public that shouldn't the high school build their own parking? So I don't know if one of those slides you can add. I think some of the reasoning we've come up with is that it's a public high school is publicly funded. They can't raise tuition to build a parking garage like Webster U could or anybody else could. Like some of those things that we had discussed as the reasons why, we're not coming out and saying, hey, Webster High School, you need to build more parking. We're saying that our community should help share more parking for them.
So Carrie, that's a really great point. The way that section is laid out is challenge 1, 2, 3, 4. Would it make sense to add another challenge?
Possibly. And if you want, if you want to kick it my way and I'll throw in some ideas, that's great too. We
No,
don't have to
I like
hold
the
it.
way you said it.
I'm just thinking
Um,
about some of the comments we've gotten as far as, that aspect.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Can you imagine a bond asking to build a parking garage?
Right? No. And somebody did we just got that letter this week where they said, they're raising money for a stadium, which is a valid point. They're raising money to build something. But I don't think, yeah. And they're getting a lot of money, and they're also, I'm not sure that they would pass a bond if they said we want to build a parking garage.
For
Like how many
kids.
people would,
Well-
how many people would vote for that?
Oh, wait, they're
Yeah.
not passing a bond for the stadium because it's private fundraising.
No, that's.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
and-
I know I'm getting confused.
No, Prop W was part of it. It's a mix. It's both. It's private and it's Prop W, which was that bonding or something else? I don't know. We did pass a proposition. We did have to vote on part of it, but the rest of it is privately raised, funded. So anyway, that's
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything
Sure.
else, Carrie?
no. That's the only other thought I had.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Does anybody have a motion to?
To adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
I don't think we have a quorum anymore. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you very
We got
much.
Bob on there still.
Yeah.
And he's technically still on the commission.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yep.
got Bob.
I was just going through, I was listening on the whole time here. And Clark, there might be one question or a typo that you had that I thought on the slide for challenge 2, growth in the number of student drivers. You got the survey by Bloomberg,
Yes.
UNBLUM. I think that's BLOOM.
Thank you.
Blumberg.
You got my
Good
Bloomberg.
catch, Bob.
But I think that should be.
Guilty, Your Honor. Thanks, Bob.
I think that should be BLOOM.
Yes, okay.
All right, I'm ending the meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.